All is not well with the e-bike industry, at least with some brands. I toyed a lot with whether I do this video or not, but I think it's important to address some of the things that are happening. And the bike behind me, the Juiced Hyper Scorpion, is probably the best, or at least the most recent example of some of the things that are happening. And so in this video, first we'll talk about some of the brand closures, some of the bankruptcies, and then I'll talk about what we're trying to do to help, say, juiced bike owners, how the current environment impacts us here at Ebike Escape, and perhaps more importantly, how we decide to review electric bikes, give you a little bit of behind the scenes. And finally, I'll discuss some recommendations for you, people who are looking at buying an electric bike, because there's some things to consider now more than ever. So let's get into it. So first, Juiced Bikes, the bike that's behind me that I still own because I love it. The company was started all the way back in 2009. Hard to believe that a company that has been around for 15 years struggled and eventually declared bankruptcy, and their assets were picked up by an unknown entity at this point. I can't wait to hear what happens because someone acquired all the intellectual property. And given the large customer base, how long they've been around, how many customers they had, it shouldn't be surprising that there are at least a few companies looking to fill in some gaps. A little bit more about that later though. I think the biggest thing with Juice though is, at least from an outsider's perspective, how surprising it was that they went out of business. I mean, if you imagine back in 2009, e-bikes were barely a thing. There were very few companies operating in the United States. And so clearly, if a company would survive, you would expect a brand like Juiced to do so. And I'll add that part of that surprise is because Juiced was a good brand. They made great e-bikes. You can say what you will about some of their customer support. I had read that it wasn't the greatest, but for the most part, people were happy with their models. They were a company that really pioneered bringing 52-volt batteries to the scene. Now many brands offer 52-volt or 60-volt, some of those higher-powered e-bikes, but Juiced was the first. And I need to bring you in here because there's a reason that I kept this bike. It's obviously a moped-style e-bike, but it's a super comfortable one to ride with upright handlebars. It came with these awesome mirrors. This is the Hyper Scorpion, and it operated more like a moped too, with keys. And so you had a bright front headlight, turn signals, gives you a ton of presence on the road, comfy seat, and yes, a loud horn. They worked with Bafang on these retro blade wheels. You can see there's no spokes there. They had durable moped tires, front suspension as well. And yes, there we go, 52 volt, 19.2 amp hour battery. And so yes, I'm going to continue to ride this bike. I still love it. My wife and I ride it all the time when we want to get somewhere quickly. And we'll just have to wait and see what happens and who bought Juiced Bikes for 1.2 million. And before we get to the next one, let me know in the comment section if you're aware of other brands that have went out of business that we didn't cover, because I have a blog post linked in the description where we're keeping tabs on all these companies and hopefully helping people out who might need parts. The next one is Van Moof, and more well known in Europe, certainly. They did sell some of their bikes in the United States, and they were known as basically the Apple of e-bikes, and they had their own challenges. The surprising thing with them, at least from my perspective, is when I went to the Netherlands 2 years ago, Van Moofs were all over the place. In fact, we went to a local shop to where we were staying, and I was able to test ride and do a full review because it was difficult to get one here in the US for review. And I was impressed with their bikes. I know they had some proprietary parts. That was maybe part of their challenges. And with Van Moof, a company did step in to buy them and support their customers, but more so in Europe. So maybe not a huge deal in the US, but they were a company that made the headlines because they had just raised so much money. The next company is Fuel, based in my home state here in Wisconsin actually, and started in part by Eric Buell from motorcycle fame. And their bikes were very interesting. They had a mid-drive motor with a gearbox in there, so it was all in one. And I think the price point was difficult for people, and also that's just a new technology, a new kind of motor and gearbox all in one. I think it just wasn't accessible to a lot of people purchasing electric bikes, though it was a fun one to ride, and it sounded like a spaceship when you rode it. The next one is Zugo, certainly a smaller company, but when I reviewed that bike, it was at the same time they were going through their financial difficulties or whatever ended up happening with the business. And it was actually really hard because I'm trying to review this bike. I had some questions for the company and I just wasn't hearing back. Come to find out eventually that they went out of business. They too have been bought, so they're technically still in business, but under new ownership. I'm not actually super familiar with what's going on there. And that was an earlier company to have gone out of business. Next, we have Dose Bikes, founded by Sam. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name, but all the way back in 2020 when I started Ebike Escape, he was one of the first people that I was able to talk to about the industry. He had a lot of experience with bike tricks and I believe Surface 604 as well, and decided to start his own company. I thought they made great bikes. I don't have a whole lot of insight on what happened there. They had a few different models focused on the more premium end of things. And around the same time I talked with Sam, that was when I talked to Court, who previously owned Electric Bike Review, so there's some nostalgia there from my perspective. And it's not just bankruptcies, there's other moving parts around the industry. I think the most recent one is Yamaha pulling out of the United States. They have slashed the prices on their e-mountain bikes a ton. I was super tempted to buy one, but I think I'm going to hold out. I really want a full suspension e-mountain bike for next spring. And so if you want to pick up one and you happen to live near a Yamaha dealer, I highly recommend it. I believe they even have a 5-year warranty. You also get a free battery. And it sounds like they're going to continue to support customers even as they pull out of the United States. Though it sounds like they're still going to provide motors to Giant. So you still will see Yamaha motors, just not on their branded electric bikes. And I've heard murmurs of other brands pulling out of the United States. And because where I sit in the market, I also kind of have an idea of some companies that might be struggling. And that's because we have affiliate relationships with a lot of these brands. So if they stop paying me, I might be one of the first people that they stop paying. They slash their marketing budgets. That's not a good sign at all. And I don't want to get political, but I've talked to some brands who are concerned about perhaps tariffs with the new administration. I think everyone can agree that this certainly would impact a lot of e-bike brands. And so that's something that I'm personally keeping an eye on. Maybe that will bring more US-based brands. I don't know if that will benefit companies like Electric Bike Company. And then yes, it's a smaller company, but you also have Nargo. They literally build their bikes here in the United States, so they're not impacted at least on the full e-bike as far as tariffs go. They still might be impacted on some of the batteries and motors that they import, of course. So 2025 is going to be interesting. And I'll admit, I was about a year off with some of my predictions. I thought last year companies would start struggling because last Black Friday was absolutely insane with people slashing prices. But it seems like 2024 was even more of a challenge, and now we see significant supplies. So now we get to kind of see how things shake out. Obviously, we're already seeing it in real time. So next, resources, particularly for juice bikes. I think that's what most people are looking for at this point. I've been following it very closely in some of the Facebook groups. There's at least 2, if not 3 other brands that have approached me wanting me to share that they'll have parts available for juiced e-bikes. And some of these companies are still getting their websites up. Some are just waiting to make sure they can actually deliver on the promises. So once I have everything compiled, there will be another blog post linked in the description. That will be a resource just for juiced bike owners, because I know there's a lot out there. People need controllers, batteries, torque sensors, something breaks. Hopefully there'll be enough support to keep these bikes on the road. Of course, it would pain me to just throw out this electric bike. And yes, I have a vested interest in keeping our Hyper Scorpion going as well. And so this is where you can help out. If you're aware of other places where people can get juice parts, just let me know. I'm happy to add it to the resource page. Sometimes those Facebook groups are just very hard to navigate, so I want to have a nice clean solution for juiced owners. So now on my end, I don't talk a lot about the behind the scenes thing. I'm usually too busy just reviewing electric bikes, but you should know for every bike that I decide to review, there's probably 4, if not 5 bikes that we are turning down. So in that way, we're trying to feature the brands that we truly believe in. Now it's impossible for me to know the financials and some of the things going on behind the scenes. Juiced is probably the best example. We reviewed their bikes because we thought they were great, and it's a huge bummer that they had to declare bankruptcy. But you should know one of our goals is to share with you e-bikes we think are great. And even in our reviews, if there's a company where we're just not sure about their customer support, we're going to disclose that and share it front and center. We're not looking to hide anything. We want to make sure you know exactly what you're getting into. And ultimately, I love e-bikes. I want you to be happy with your purchase. So we're going to share what we think is compelling on the market today. My advice to you, if you're looking to purchase your first e-bike or even your second or third, it's now more important than ever to purchase from a reputable brand. So at least there's a better chance that they're going to be in business for the long haul. You'll probably notice, or maybe you've already noticed, that we're going to cover some of the bigger names in the industry that we can really get behind on and that we've met in person and seen their customer support, and that of course we can recommend to you. And just generally, yes, there are some awesome direct-to-consumer e-bike brands. I love direct-to-consumer e-bike brands because you just unquestionably get a better value, but don't discount your local bike shop and the brands that they might offer. Some of the brands that have been around for decades, yes, the price might be higher, but you do have the added benefit of having somewhere to go if you do encounter a problem. And as an aside, there are some bike shops or maybe just some newer e-bike stores that are stocking some of these lesser known names. So ask them when you go and test ride an e-bike, ask them about the brand, ask them about support, ask them about parts that they have available. Have they had any issues with some of the ones that they've sold? As the industry struggles, everything of course trickles down. That includes us here at Ebike Escape and other outlets like us. So now more than ever, we certainly appreciate your support. If you're planning to buy from one of the brands that we have an affiliate relationship with, we just appreciate if you use our link in the description before you make your purchase. That certainly helps us out and costs you nothing. Otherwise, just liking this video and subscribing to the channel means a lot. Or if you need some accessories for your electric bike, we have them available at shop.ebikeescape.com. We've tried to diversify as much as we can, but at the end of the day, everything is bike related, and the bike industry is certainly struggling right now with oversupply and clearly companies struggling. I hope you found this video helpful. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. I've now created this e-bike graveyard blog post where we're collecting all of the brands that have gone out of business. And I hope not to have to add to it too frequently. I hope we can bounce back from this, get more people on electric bikes. But of course, there's always good news. If you plan to purchase an electric bike, now is the best time to buy. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.